I died at 28 in a cheap motel room, alone except for the empty pill bottles scattered across the nightstand. My fiancé Marcus was at a celebration dinner with his lover Sophia, the woman whose medical licensing exam I'd refused to help her cheat on 3 years earlier. They were celebrating her promotion to head nurse at the hospital where I used to work before they'd gotten me fired. The last text I'd sent Marcus before swallowing those pills was simple. "I'm sorry I wasn't who you needed me to be." He replied 6 hours later, after I was already dead. "Stop being so dramatic. We'll talk when I get home." There was no home. I'd been evicted 2 weeks earlier. Everything I'd built, everyone I'd loved, every dream I'd had, all of it had been systematically destroyed because I'd said one word 3 years ago: no. My name is Rachel Chin, and I spent 5 years watching the man I loved choose his affair partner over me, again and again, while telling me I was jealous, vindictive, and selfish for not supporting their relationship. I spent 5 years being gaslit into believing that my refusal to help Sophia cheat her way into a nursing license was the real betrayal, not Marcus's affair or Sophia's fraud. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in a morgue or heaven. I was 23, sitting in my apartment that I'd shared with Marcus for 2 years, staring at my laptop screen. The email was still open, the one from Sophia Chen asking if I'd help her study for her nursing boards by giving her the answers to the practice exams I'd helped develop as a medical education coordinator. In my previous life, I'd written back a polite refusal, explaining that sharing exam materials would be unethical. That refusal had been the beginning of the end. This time, I didn't refuse. I didn't respond at all. Instead, I opened a new document and started writing down everything I knew about what was coming. Marcus would defend Sophia, saying I was being uptight and judgmental. He'd accuse me of being jealous that Sophia was close to him. He'd gaslight me into thinking my boundaries were the problem. Within 6 months, Sophia and Marcus would be having an affair. Within a year, Sophia would fail her boards anyway, twice, and blame me for not helping her. Within 18 months, Marcus would propose I let Sophia move in with us, temporarily, while she retook her exams. Within 2 years, I'd be sleeping on the couch in my own apartment while Marcus and Sophia shared our bedroom. I wrote it all down. Every detail. Every moment of manipulation. Every lie. Every betrayal. Then I saved the document with a timestamp and backed it up to 3 different cloud services. Then I started planning. Marcus came home that evening with takeout and that easy smile I'd once found so attractive. "Hey babe, how was your day?" "Good." "Productive." I took the food from him. "Actually, I need to talk to you about something." "Sure, what's up?" "I got an email from your sister today. She wants me to help her cheat on her nursing boards." Marcus's expression didn't change, but I saw the calculation behind his eyes. In my previous timeline, he denied knowing anything about Sophia's email. This time, I'd framed it differently, made it clear I knew he was involved. "Sophia mentioned she might reach out to you for study help," he said carefully. "But I wouldn't call it cheating. She just wants some guidance from someone who knows the exam format." "She asked me to give her the actual exam questions, Marcus." "That's not guidance, that's fraud." "She didn't mean it like that. You're misinterpreting." "I have the email. I can show you exactly what she asked for." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Okay, maybe she worded it wrong. But you know how stressed she is about these exams. She's failed twice already. She's desperate. So desperate she's willing to commit fraud? It's not fraud if you're just helping family." His voice had an edge now. "Rachel, this is my sister. She needs help and you're in a position to help her. Why are you being so rigid about this?" There it was. The implication that I was the problem for having boundaries. I'm not helping her cheat. If she wants legitimate study help, I can recommend tutors or study groups. But I'm not giving her exam materials. You're being ridiculous. Do you know how much those exams cost? How much she's already spent? And you could help her pass, but you won't because of some arbitrary ethical line. It's not arbitrary. It's illegal. And it's dangerous. If she can't pass the boards legitimately, she shouldn't be practicing nursing. Marcus stood up, his face flushed. "I can't believe you. My sister is struggling, and you're acting like she's asking you to help her murder someone. It's a test, Rachel. Just a test. It's a licensing exam that determines if someone is competent to care for patients. It matters. What matters is family. But apparently you don't understand that. He grabbed his jacket. I need some air. He left. I knew where he was going. To Sophia's apartment to complain about me. To position himself as the mediator between his unreasonable girlfriend and his struggling sister. What Marcus didn't know was that Sophia wasn't actually his sister. That was the first shocking truth I'd discovered too late in my previous timeline. Sophia Chim wasn't related to Marcus at all. She'd been his girlfriend in college, and when they'd broken up, she'd stayed in touch, presenting herself as a close friend, or like a sister. By the time I'd figured out they'd dated, Marcus had convinced me I was being paranoid and jealous to care about ancient history. This time, I'd verified it on day one of my rebirth. I checked Marcus's old social media, his college photos, found their relationship clearly documented. Sophia had been his girlfriend for 3 years, and their breakup had been messy and dramatic. And now she was back, claiming she just needed help with her career, while Marcus lied about their relationship and set me up to be the villain for not supporting his ex-girlfriend's fraud. While Marcus was gone, I did 3 things. First, I screenshot Sophia's email and sent it to myself at 3 different addresses with timestamps. Second, I filed a confidential report with the state nursing board about an anonymous individual soliciting exam fraud. Third, I called a locksmith and scheduled them to change my apartment locks the next day while Marcus was at work. When Marcus came back 3 hours later, smelling like perfume I recognized as Sophia's, I was sitting calmly on the couch. "We need to talk," he said. "I agree. Rachel, I love you. But I can't be with someone who won't support my family. Sophia is important to me. And if you can't respect that, Sophia isn't your family. She's your ex-girlfriend from college." Marcus went completely still. "What are you talking about? I found your old Facebook. The photos from college. The relationship status. The breakup posts." I kept my voice even. "You've been lying about your relationship with her since we met. That was years ago. It doesn't matter. It matters that you lied. It matters that you've been bringing your ex-girlfriend around, calling her your sister, asking me to help her commit fraud. It matters that you're trying to make me feel like I'm the problem when you're the one being dishonest." Marcus's face went through several expressions: panic, anger, calculation. "Okay, yes, we dated in college. But that was over long before I met you. We're just friends now, and I didn't tell you because I knew you'd be weird about it. I'm weird for not wanting my boyfriend to lie to me about his relationship with another woman? You're being paranoid and insecure. Sophia and I are friends. That's all. And you're using this as an excuse to not help her because you're jealous. I'm not helping her because she asked me to help her cheat. Your relationship with her doesn't change that. Fine. Don't help her. But don't expect me to choose you over her. She's been in my life longer than you have." There it was. The threat. The ultimatum I'd caved to in my previous timeline. "Then I guess you've made your choice," I said. "I want you to move out." Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're breaking up with me because I won't abandon my friend? I'm breaking up with you because you lied about who she is, you're pressuring me to help her commit fraud, and you just told me you prioritize her over me. Those seem like good reasons. You're insane. You know that? You're throwing away 3 years because you're jealous and insecure, Anne. I'm done with this conversation. I want you moved out by this weekend. I've already scheduled the locks to be changed. You can't kick me out. I live here too. Your name isn't on the lease. Mine is. You have until Saturday." Marcus stared at me like he didn't recognize me. In my previous timeline, I'd been so afraid of losing him that I'd accepted any boundary violation. This version of me was a stranger to him. "You're going to regret this," he said quietly. "When you're alone and you realize what you threw away, you're going to regret it. Maybe, but I'll regret staying more." He left. I sat in the silence of my apartment and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. I'd done it. I'd set a boundary and enforced it. I hadn't caved or negotiated or tried to make him understand. I just said no and meant it. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day securing everything. I moved Marcus's belongings to storage and changed the locks. I documented everything. Every text he'd sent, every email, every instance of him trying to manipulate or pressure me. Marcus didn't take the breakup well. Over the next week, he called me 57 times. He sent over 100 texts ranging from apologetic, "I'm sorry, I overreacted, let's talk," to angry, "You're making a huge mistake," to manipulative, "Sophia is really hurt that you think so badly of her, maybe you should apologize." I blocked his number after saving everything to my evidence file. Then Sophia started. She showed up at my workplace, crying, begging me to reconsider. "Rachel, please, I didn't mean anything bad by asking for help. I was just scared and desperate. Marcus says you broke up with him over this and I feel terrible. Please don't let me be the reason you two split up." "You're not the reason," I said. "Marcus's lying and manipulation are the reason. He's not a liar. He just cares about me and wants to help me succeed. Is that so wrong? It's wrong when the help is fraud. It's wrong when he lies about your relationship. It's wrong when he prioritizes you over his partner." Sophia's tears dried instantly. "You're just jealous that he still cares about me, that I matter to him. If I'm jealous, it's because he treated you like a priority and me like an inconvenience. But that's his problem, not mine. I'm not competing for someone who doesn't value me. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? With your perfect job and your ethics and your judgmental attitude. I made one mistake. You made multiple mistakes. You failed the boards twice because you tried to cheat instead of study. You're pursuing fraud because you can't succeed legitimately. Those aren't mistakes, they're choices. How dare you? I need you to leave. And don't contact me again. If you do, I'll add it to the harassment complaint I'm preparing." Sophia's face went ugly. Harassment complaint? For asking for help. For soliciting academic fraud. For showing up at my workplace. For your ongoing campaign to pressure me into committing a crime. I kept my voice level. I have documentation of everything. Leave me alone or I'll use it. After she left, my hands were shaking. But I'd done it again. Held my boundary, didn't cave. Didn't try to be nice or understanding or accommodating. 2 weeks after the breakup, I got called into my supervisor's office. "Rachel, we've received a concerning complaint about you," Dr. Williams said. "From Sophia Chun. She says you've been harassing her, stalking her, and making false accusations about her character because you're jealous of her relationship with your ex-boyfriend." My stomach dropped. This had happened in my previous timeline too. Sophia had filed a complaint against me at work, painting me as an unstable, jealous woman. Back then, I'd had no evidence to defend myself. This time was different. "That's not accurate," I said calmly. "I have documentation of what actually happened. Would you like to see it?" Dr. Williams looked surprised but nodded. I pulled out my carefully organized file. Sophia's original email soliciting exam fraud. Marcus's text pressuring me to help her. Records of my confidential report to the nursing board. Sophia's subsequent harassment. Witness statements from colleagues who'd seen Sophia at my workplace crying. "This is extensive," Dr. Williams said, reading through everything. "I documented everything because I knew Sophia and Marcus would try to retaliate. They've been pressuring me to help Sophia cheat on her nursing boards, and when I refused, they started a campaign to destroy my credibility. These emails clearly show Ms. Chun soliciting unauthorized access to exam materials." Dr. Williams's face was grim. "And you reported this to the nursing board?" "Anonymously, yes. Because it's my professional obligation." "You did the right thing. And I'll be forwarding this to HR. Ms. Chen's complaint against you is clearly retaliatory." She paused. "I'm sorry you've been dealing with this, Rachel. You should have come to me sooner. I wasn't sure I'd be believed. People tend to see me as the jealous girlfriend, not the professional trying to maintain ethics. I see you as someone with integrity who's being punished for it. That ends now." 3 days later, I was called to an HR meeting. Marcus and Sophia were there, along with HR representatives and legal counsel. "We're here to address allegations of harassment and retaliation," the HR director said. "Ms. Chun, Mr. Thompson, you filed complaints against Ms. Rachel Chun. She's filed counter-complaints against both of you. Let's start with your allegations. Sophia went first, crying and describing how I'd stalked her and spread lies about her to sabotage her career because I was obsessed with Marcus. Then Marcus, talking about how I'd suddenly become paranoid and controlling, and kicked him out for no reason, and was now trying to destroy Sophia because I couldn't handle their friendship. Then it was my turn. I didn't cry. I didn't get emotional. I just presented documentation. Sophia's original email soliciting fraud. Marcus's texts pressuring me. Records of my report to the nursing board. Sophia's harassment at my workplace. Marcus's 57 calls in 1 week. Evidence that Marcus had lied about Sophia being his sister when she was actually his ex-girlfriend. Screenshots from Marcus's old social media showing their relationship. The room was silent when I finished. So to be clear, the HR director said slowly, Ms. Chen asked you to provide unauthorized access to exam materials. You refused and reported it appropriately. Mr. Thompson pressured you to comply, lied about his relationship with Ms. Chen, and when you ended your relationship with him, they both launched a harassment campaign against you. Yes. The HR director looked at legal counsel, who nodded. Ms. Chen, your visitor access to this facility is revoked effective immediately. You're being banned from the premises. Any further contact with Ms. Rachel Chen will be considered trespassing and harassment. Sophia's mouth fell open. What? But You solicited academic fraud in writing. You harassed an employee at her workplace. You filed a false complaint in retaliation for legitimate reporting. You're lucky Ms. Rachel Chen isn't pressing criminal charges. Mr. Thompson, the director continued, you don't work here, but be aware that any further contact with Ms. Chen will also be considered harassment. We're issuing a formal cease and desist. Marcus was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Rachel, you can't seriously. The meeting is over, the HR director said. Security will escort you both out. After they left, I sat in the conference room shaking. Not from fear, but from vindication. I'd stood up for myself, documented everything, and won. You did good, Dr. Williams said quietly. Most people wouldn't have had the courage to stand up to that kind of pressure. I didn't have a choice. If I'd given in, I'd have been complicit in fraud. And they'd have just kept asking for more. You're right. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you're on our team. We need people with your integrity. Over the next month, things escalated in ways I'd expected but were still satisfying to watch. Sophia failed her nursing boards for the 3rd time. Without my help, and with the nursing board now aware of her soliciting fraud, she was flagged for additional scrutiny. Her exam was hand-scored, her testing center was notified to watch for cheating, and she had to pass an ethics review before being allowed to test again. She failed that too. Marcus tried repeatedly to contact me through mutual friends, social media, even showing up at places he knew I frequented. Each attempt was documented and added to my harassment file. Finally, he sent an email that revealed just how little he'd ever understood. Rachel, I don't understand why you're doing this. I loved you. We had something real. But you threw it away over Sophia asking for a little help. Do you know what you've done? She can't get licensed now because of you. Her career is ruined because you were too selfish to help someone in need. Was your ethics worth destroying her life? Was it worth losing me? I hope you're happy alone because no one else will ever put up with your rigidity and judgment. You're going to end up bitter and lonely, wondering why everyone leaves you. And it'll be because you value rules over relationships, principles over people. Sophia and I are together now. Really together. And we're happy. We're planning a future. A future that could have included you if you'd just been willing to compromise. But you weren't. And now you'll never know what you lost. I read the email 3 times. Then I replied, Marcus, you're right about one thing. We had something real. We had a relationship built on lies, manipulation, and your expectation that I'd compromise my ethics to enable your ex-girlfriend's fraud. That was real. What wasn't real was your claim to love me. People who love you don't ask you to commit crimes for them. They don't lie about other relationships. They don't choose their affair partner over their partner, and then blame you for not accepting it. You talk about me being rigid and judgmental, but I see it differently. I have standards. I have boundaries. I have self-respect. Those aren't flaws, they're strengths. And yes, I'd rather be alone with my integrity than in a relationship where I have to sacrifice it to keep someone who doesn't value me. As for Sophia's career being ruined, she ruined it herself by trying to cheat instead of study. I'm not responsible for the consequences of her choices. I'm only responsible for mine. And my choice is to never speak to you again. Don't contact me. Move on with Sophia. And in the future, when you're looking for someone to enable your and your partner's unethical behavior, make sure you're upfront about that requirement. Some people might be willing. I'm not one of them. I blocked him after sending it and felt nothing but relief. 6 months after the breakup, I was thriving. I'd gotten a promotion at work. I'd published a paper on medical education ethics. I'd started dating someone new. A man named David who had his own career, his own friends, and his own ethical boundaries that he didn't expect me to violate. Then I got a call from a lawyer representing patients harmed by a nurse at Marcus and Sophia's hospital. Ms. Chun, I'm gathering information about Sophia Chen's qualifications. I understand you had contact with her regarding her nursing licensure. I can't discuss that without knowing more about your case. The lawyer explained. Sophia had eventually gotten licensed through a less rigorous online program. She'd been hired at a small hospital where Marcus worked as an administrator. Over 6 months, she'd made multiple serious errors, medication mistakes, misdiagnoses, falsified charts. 3 patients had been seriously harmed. 1 had died. The families were suing, and the investigation had revealed that Sophia's credentials were questionable, her references were falsified, and Marcus had used his position to get her hired despite red flags. I have documentation that Sophia solicited academic fraud, I said carefully, and that Marcus pressured me to help her. I reported it to the nursing board at the time, but I don't know what action they took. Would you be willing to testify about that? Yes, if it helps those families get justice. The trial was 8 months later. I sat in the witness box and described Sophia's email, Marcus's pressure, my refusal, and their retaliation. Sophia's lawyer tried to paint me as a jealous ex with an axe to grind. Isn't it true you were bitter about Ms. Chen's relationship with your ex-boyfriend? I was hurt that my boyfriend lied about his relationship with his ex and prioritized her over me, yes. But my refusal to help her cheat wasn't about bitterness, it was about ethics. Ethics that you selectively applied when it suited your personal vendetta? Ethics that I applied consistently, which is why I'm now testifying against someone I have every personal reason to want to protect. If I was bitter and vindictive, I'd let Sophia keep practicing and harming patients. Instead, I'm here trying to stop her. That shut the lawyer up. The jury found against Sophia and the hospital. Sophia's nursing license was permanently revoked. Marcus was fired from his administrative position and faced professional sanctions for his role in getting her hired. After the verdict, the family of the patient who died approached me. Thank you, the mother said, crying. Thank you for having the courage to speak up. If more people had your integrity, my son might still be alive. I cried too, because in my previous timeline, I hadn't spoken up strongly enough. I'd been bullied into silence, into doubting myself, into thinking my ethics were the problem. And people had died because Sophia had been allowed to practice without competence. This time I'd held my ground. And it had mattered. 1 year after the breakup, Marcus sent one final email. Rachel, I know you won't respond, but I need to say this. You were right. About everything. Sophia wasn't qualified to be a nurse. She did cheat her way through her programs. She did hurt people. And I enabled it because I cared more about her than about doing the right thing. I lied to you, manipulated you, and tried to make you the villain for having standards I should have had. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I asked you to compromise your ethics. I'm sorry I chose her over you. I'm sorry I didn't see what I had until it was gone. You deserved better than I gave you. And I hope David treats you the way I should have. I hope you're happy. I hope you never forgive me, because I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that you were right, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I read it once. Then I deleted it without responding. Some apologies are too late. Some damage can't be undone. Some people don't deserve the closure they're seeking. Marcus had made his choices. He'd chosen Sophia over me, lies over honesty, enabling over ethics. He destroyed our relationship, harmed patience, and ruined his career because he couldn't stand up to someone he'd dated in college. That wasn't my problem anymore. 2 years after the breakup, David proposed. We got married in a small ceremony with people who actually knew and loved us, not a performance for anyone's benefit. At the reception, my friend Emma pulled me aside. I have to tell you something. Back when you were with Marcus, I always thought you should leave him. But I never said anything because I didn't want to seem judgmental. Why did you think I should leave? Because he treated you like an accessory, not a partner. Like your purpose was to support him and his friends and never have needs or boundaries of your own. I watched you get smaller and smaller around him, trying to be what he wanted instead of who you were. Emma squeezed my hand. But I'm so glad you left when you did. I'm so glad you stood up for yourself. Me too. Even though it was the hardest thing I've ever done. That's what makes it brave. Easy things don't count. 3 years after the breakup, I was presenting at a medical ethics conference when I saw Sophia in the audience. She looked different, older, harder, diminished somehow. After my presentation, she approached me. I need to talk to you. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. Just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We went to a quiet corner of the conference center. Sophia looked like she was struggling with what to say. I'm sorry, she finally said. For everything. For asking you to help me cheat. For coming between you and Marcus. For the harassment. For filing that false complaint. For all of it. Okay. I ruined my career. I hurt people. I destroyed Marcus's career too. And it's all because I was too proud to admit I wasn't qualified. Too scared to put in the real work, too willing to take shortcuts. Yes. I'm in nursing school again. Starting over, doing it right this time. No cheating, no shortcuts. Just actual learning and hard work. She looked at me directly. I wanted you to know that. And I wanted to thank you. Thank me. For stopping me. If you'd helped me cheat, I'd have kept cheating. I'd have kept hurting people. I'd have eventually killed someone through incompetence. Sophia's voice broke. I did kill someone. A 78-year-old man died because I gave him the wrong medication dosage. And it was my fault because I didn't actually know what I was doing. I cheated my way through everything and didn't have the foundation I needed. I'm sorry that happened. I'm not looking for absolution. I just wanted you to know that you were right to say no. Right to report me. Right to stand your ground even when Marcus and I made you the villain for it. You saved lives by stopping me. After she left, I sat alone thinking about the 2 timelines. In my previous life, I'd eventually caved to the pressure. I'd helped Sophia cheat, compromised my ethics, lost myself piece by piece until there was nothing left but the role they'd assigned me. The helper, the enabler, the woman who sacrificed everything to keep men comfortable and incompetent people employed. That Rachel had died alone in a motel room, believing she was the problem. This Rachel was married to a good man, thriving in her career, and secure in the knowledge that standing up for herself hadn't been selfish. It had been essential. 5 years after the breakup, I got an invitation to speak at a conference on maintaining professional ethics under pressure. The organizer explained, "Your case has become famous in medical ethics circles. The way you resisted pressure from your partner and his ex-girlfriend, documented everything, and ultimately prevented patient harm. It's taught in ethics courses now as an example of how to maintain integrity in difficult situations." I'm being taught in ethics courses? You're the Rachel Chen case. Every medical student and healthcare professional knows about you. You're why we have updated policies on reporting academic fraud and protecting whistleblowers. I stood at that podium 5 years later, looking out at hundreds of medical professionals, and told my story. Not the rebirth part, but the part about being pressured to compromise ethics for relationship harmony, about being made to feel like my boundaries were the problem, about standing firm even when it cost me everything I thought I wanted. The hardest part wasn't saying no. I told them. It was accepting that saying no made me the villain in their story. That Marcus would tell people I'd broken up with him over nothing. That Sophia would paint me as jealous and vindictive. that mutual friends would think I'd been rigid and unforgiving. The hardest part was knowing I'd be seen as the bad guy for having boundaries. But here's what I learned. Your reputation among people who ask you to compromise your ethics doesn't matter. The only reputation that matters is the one you have with yourself. Can you look in the mirror and respect who you see? That's the question that matters. People who love you don't ask you to destroy yourself for them. People who respect you don't resent your boundaries. People who deserve you don't make you feel like your ethics are an inconvenience. And if losing people means keeping your integrity, you haven't lost anything. You've just revealed who they always were. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people approached me with their own stories of being pressured to compromise ethics for relationships, for jobs, for social harmony. You gave me permission to say no, one young woman told me. I was being pressured to falsify research data by my advisor. Your story made me realize I could refuse and survive. Another. My husband wanted me to help his business partner commit insurance fraud. I thought I'd lose him if I said no. Your case showed me that if I lose someone for having ethics, they weren't worth keeping. I went home to David that night and told him about the conference. You're famous, he said smiling. The most ethical woman in America. I'm not famous. I'm just someone who said no and got lucky it worked out. You're someone who said no and made it work out. There's a difference. Luck is passive. You were active. You documented, you reported, you stood your ground, you protected patients even when it cost you personally. In another life I didn't. In another life, I caved to the pressure and lost myself completely. David pulled me close. But that's not this life. In this life, you chose yourself. And everyone who needed you to sacrifice yourself for them learned they couldn't control you. 10 years after the breakup, I was 43 years old, a leading voice in medical ethics, and the mother of 2 children who were being raised to understand that boundaries weren't mean. They were necessary. I was at my daughter's school career day when another parent approached me. You're Rachel Chun, right? The ethics woman. That's one way to put it. I just wanted to thank you. I read your book and it changed my life. I'd been letting my family pressure me into unethical situations for years. Lying on their behalf, covering up their mistakes, enabling their dysfunction. Your book made me realize I could stop. That I didn't owe them my integrity just because we shared DNA. These conversations happened regularly now. My story had escaped the medical ethics world and entered the broader cultural conversation about people-pleasing, boundary setting, and the cost of maintaining relationships with people who demanded you destroy yourself for them. I'd never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to keep my job and my self-respect. But somehow, refusing to help my ex-boyfriend's affair partner cheat had turned into a referendum on women's autonomy, professional ethics, and the right to say no. 15 years after the breakup, Marcus died. Liver failure from alcoholism. I found out from his obituary. The obituary mentioned his successful career in hospital administration and his dedication to helping others. It didn't mention his firing, his role in enabling an incompetent nurse, or the patients who'd been harmed because of him. I didn't attend the funeral. I didn't send condolences. I simply acknowledged that a person I'd once loved had made choices that destroyed him, and that I'd escaped in time to avoid being destroyed with him. Sophia sent me a letter after his death. Rachel, I know we haven't spoken in years, but I thought you should know that Marcus never forgave himself for what happened with you. He drank himself to death, but really he died from guilt. From knowing he'd chosen me over you and lost everything because of it. I'm not writing for sympathy or forgiveness. I'm writing because you should know that you mattered to him. That losing you broke something in him that never healed. I hope that gives you some satisfaction. Though I suspect you're too good a person to take satisfaction in someone's suffering. I'm sober now, by the way. 5 years. Working as a medical assistant. Not a nurse. I'm not qualified and I know it. I help within my abilities and don't pretend to be more than I am. It's honest work and I sleep better than I did when I was pretending to be competent. I hope you're happy, Rachel. I hope you got everything you deserved. You were always the strongest person in the room, and none of us appreciated it. I folded the letter and put it away. Marcus's death didn't give me satisfaction, But it didn't make me sad either. He'd been a ghost to me for 15 years, someone who'd once mattered but didn't anymore. The Marcus I'd loved had been a fiction, a character he'd played to keep me compliant. The real Marcus was the man who'd lied about his ex, pressured me to commit fraud, chosen her over me, and then destroyed his career enabling her incompetence. That man's death was just a fact, like the weather. Notable but not meaningful. 20 years after the breakup, I was 53 years old and retiring from active clinical work to focus on ethics consulting and writing. My children were grown. My daughter was in medical school, my son was studying law, both of them raised to understand that integrity wasn't negotiable. At my retirement party, Dr. Williams, now retired herself, gave a speech. 27 years ago, a young woman came to me with documentation of fraud and harassment. She was terrified. She thought she might lose her job, her reputation, everything she'd worked for, because she'd said no to helping someone cheat. I remember thinking how rare that was. How many people would have just helped to avoid the conflict? But Rachel Chen had integrity that ran deeper than self-preservation. And because of that, patients were protected. Standards were upheld. And a generation of healthcare professionals learned that ethics matter more than comfort. Dr. Williams looked directly at me. Rachel taught us that the right choice isn't always the popular choice. That standing alone with your principles is better than compromising them for company. And that the people who pressure you to violate your ethics are telling you exactly who they are. Believe them. After the party, David and I drove home in comfortable silence. 20 years of marriage had taught us that not every moment needed words. You know what I realized today? I finally said. What's that? In my other life, the one where I caved to the pressure, I was miserable for 5 years and then I died. In this life, I've been happy for 27 years. The math is clear. The math has always been clear. You just needed to trust it. That night, I pulled out the document I'd written on that first day after rebirth. The timeline of everything that would have happened if I'd said yes instead of no. I read through it one more time, seeing the alternate version of myself who'd helped Sophia cheat, who'd stayed with Marcus, who'd lost herself piece by piece until there was nothing left. Then I deleted it. I didn't need that timeline anymore. Didn't need the reminder of what I'd escaped. I knew who I was now, not despite refusing to help, but because I'd refused. 25 years after the breakup, I published my final book, The Courage to Disappoint. Why saying no is the most generous thing you can do. The premise was simple. When you say yes to things that violate your values, you teach people that your boundaries don't matter. You teach them that persistence and pressure work. You teach them that your ethics are negotiable. But when you say no, when you hold your ground even when it costs you relationships, opportunities, or approval, you teach people something more important. You teach them who you actually are. You teach them that you mean what you say. You teach them that your integrity isn't for sale. And the people who leave because you won't compromise yourself? They're showing you that they never valued you. They only valued what you could do for them. The book became required reading in medical schools, nursing programs, and ethics courses worldwide. But more than that, it became a cultural touchstone for anyone struggling with boundary setting, people-pleasing, or the fear of disappointing others. I received thousands of letters from people who'd said no to unethical requests because of my story. People who'd ended toxic relationships. People who'd walked away from jobs that demanded they compromise themselves. People who'd chosen their integrity over others' comfort. You gave me permission to be the villain, one woman wrote. My family wanted me to lie in court to protect my brother. I said no and they disowned me. Your book reminded me that being disowned by people who wanted me to perjure myself wasn't a loss. It was liberation. Another. My boss wanted me to falsify safety reports. I was terrified to refuse because I needed the job. But I read your book and realized I needed my integrity more. I reported him instead. He was fired and I was promoted. Thank you for showing me that doing the right thing isn't just moral, it's strategic. These were the victories I'd never imagined when I'd first said no to Sophia's request. I'd thought I was just protecting my job and my ethics. I hadn't realized I was starting a movement. 30 years after the breakup, I was 63 years old when I received an unexpected visitor. A young woman named Sarah showed up at my office with a familiar story. "Miss Chun, I'm engaged to be married. My fiancé's ex-girlfriend needs help passing the bar exam. She's failed 3 times. He wants me to give her my study materials, let her use my bar prep account, basically help her cheat. When I said no, he told me I was being selfish and unsupportive. That if I loved him, I'd help his friend. But she's not his friend, she's his ex. And he lied about that until I found their old photos." "What does your gut tell you?" I asked. "That if I help her cheat, he'll ask me to compromise more and more until there's nothing left of me. That this is a test to see if I'll violate my ethics for him. That if I marry him, I'll spend my life making myself smaller to make him comfortable." "Your gut is right. But I love him. And everyone says I'm being rigid. That it's just a test. That helping someone isn't cheating. That I'm throwing away a good relationship over nothing." "It's not nothing. It's everything. It's the difference between a partnership based on mutual respect and one based on your willingness to sacrifice yourself for his comfort." Sarah started crying. "I don't want to be alone." I know. I didn't either. But I was more afraid of being alone with someone who didn't respect me than I was of being actually alone. And it turned out, I wasn't alone for long. Because when you respect yourself, you attract people who respect you too. What if I'm wrong? What if he's a good person and I'm just being paranoid? Then breaking up with him will reveal that. Good people don't pressure their partners to commit fraud. Good people don't lie about their exes. Good people don't make you choose between your ethics and their approval. Sarah called off her engagement. 3 months later, she discovered her ex-fiancé and his ex-girlfriend had been having an affair the entire time. They'd wanted her help cheating on the bar because they were planning to open a law practice together and needed her to be complicit in their fraud. "You saved my career before it even started," Sarah told me. "And you saved me from wasting my life on someone who saw me as a tool, not a partner." 35 years after the breakup, I was 68 years old and preparing for a documentary about my life. The filmmaker wanted to trace the entire arc, from that first email from Sophia to the current day. "What do you want people to understand about your story?" she asked during our first interview. "I want them to understand that saying no isn't mean. It's honest. And honesty is kinder than enabling someone's self-destruction." "Do you have any regrets?" "Only one. I regret that in my first timeline I said yes. I regret the years I wasted trying to keep people comfortable at the cost of my own integrity. I regret that it took dying and being reborn to learn that my boundaries mattered." "But you don't regret the consequences your refusal had for Marcus and Sophia?" "No. Because those consequences weren't my doing. They were the natural result of their choices. Sophia chose to cheat repeatedly. Marcus chose to enable her. They both chose to harass me when I wouldn't join their scheme. The consequences they faced came from their actions, not mine. Some people say you were vindictive, that you went too far in testifying against them. Some people value comfort over justice. I'm not one of them. Sophia's incompetence killed a patient. If testifying about her academic fraud history helps prevent more deaths, I'll testify every time. That's not vindictive, that's responsible." The documentary premiered at a film festival and won awards for its examination of ethics, integrity, and the cost of people-pleasing. But more importantly, it sparked conversations in workplaces, schools, and families about the pressure to compromise ourselves for others. 40 years after the breakup, David and I celebrated our 38th wedding anniversary. Our children were established in their careers. My daughter was a pediatrician known for her patient advocacy. My son was a civil rights attorney who specialized in whistleblower protection. "We did good," David said, looking at photos of our family. "We did. But I almost didn't. I almost said yes to Sophia. I almost stayed with Marcus. I almost lost everything that mattered because I was afraid of being alone." "But you didn't. You chose yourself. And look what you built from that choice." That night, I thought about the 2 versions of myself. The one who died at 28, alone and broken, having sacrificed everything for people who'd valued her for what she could provide, not who she was. And this version, 68 years old, surrounded by people who loved her for herself, respected for her integrity, secure in the knowledge that every hard choice had been the right choice. The difference between those two lives had come down to one word. No. No, I won't help you cheat. No, I won't accept your lies. No, I won't compromise my ethics. No, I won't sacrifice myself to keep you comfortable. That single word, backed by consistent action and documented boundaries, had changed everything. Marcus and Sophia had expected me to cave. They'd expected guilt, self-doubt, the desperate need to be liked that had defined me before. They'd expected to wear me down, to outlast my resistance, to eventually get what they wanted because people always caved to them. They'd never expected what was actually waiting. A woman who'd learned that her integrity was more valuable than their approval. A woman who'd document every manipulation and use it to protect herself. A woman who'd stand alone rather than compromise herself for company. That was what had shocked them. Not my refusal. My persistence in that refusal. My unwillingness to be manipulated, guilt, or threatened into compliance. And in their shock, they'd revealed exactly who they were. People who couldn't respect boundaries, couldn't accept rejection, couldn't function without someone enabling their worst impulses. I'd escaped them by the simple act of meaning what I said and saying what I meant. 45 years after the breakup, I was 73 years old when I gave my final public speech at a medical ethics conference. My health was failing, nothing dramatic, just the slow decline of age. And I knew this would be my last time addressing a large audience. 45 years ago, I was asked to help someone cheat. I said no. That decision cost me my relationship, nearly cost me my career, made me the villain in someone else's story. But it was the best decision I ever made. Because in saying no to them, I said yes to myself. And that yes, that commitment to my own integrity, built everything good in my life. I'm often asked if I would have said no if I'd known the cost. If I'd known my fiancé would leave, that I'd be harassed, that I'd have to fight to keep my job. And the answer is yes. Because the cost of saying yes would have been higher. It would have cost me my self-respect, my integrity, my ability to look at myself in the mirror and recognize who I saw. The people who leave when you set boundaries are showing you that they only valued what you could do for them, not who you are. And losing people who never valued you isn't a loss, it's clarity. So my advice after 45 years of living with that choice is simple. Say no when no is the right answer. Document everything. Stand your ground. And trust that the people who truly belong in your life will respect your boundaries, not resent them. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people approached me, some with their own stories of boundary setting, some with questions, some just wanting to shake my hand. You changed my life, a woman told me. I was being pressured to commit insurance fraud. Your story gave me the courage to report it instead. Another. My family wanted me to lie for them. I said no and they cut me off. Your example showed me I did the right thing. A young man. I'm a medical student. We study your case in ethics class. You're why I know I can refuse to participate in things I disagree with. These conversations were my legacy. Not the papers I'd published or the awards I'd won, but the people I'd helped find the courage to stand up for themselves. I went home that evening and found David waiting with our children and grandchildren. They'd organized a small party to celebrate my final speech. To Mom, my daughter said, raising a glass, who taught us that being liked is nice, but being respected is essential. To Grandma, my oldest grandchild added, who showed us that the right choice isn't always the easy choice. I looked around at this family, at the life I'd built because I'd been willing to stand alone, and felt complete peace. In another timeline, another version of me had died in a motel room, believing she was the problem for having boundaries. That Rachel's suffering had purchased this Rachel's wisdom. And this Rachel had used that wisdom to build a life worth living. Not despite saying no, but because she'd said no. That night, David and I sat together in our living room, holding hands the way we had for 38 years. No regrets, he asked. Only one. I regret the time I wasted in that first timeline trying to be who they wanted instead of who I was. But you learned. I learned. And I taught others. And that makes the suffering worthwhile. 3 months later, I died peacefully in my sleep at 73, surrounded by family who loved me, secure in the knowledge that I'd lived authentically, leaving behind a legacy of integrity that would outlast me. At my funeral, they didn't talk about how agreeable I'd been, or how much I'd sacrificed, or how I'd made myself smaller to accommodate others. They talked about how I'd stood firm, how I'd valued truth over comfort, how I'd chosen integrity over approval, how I'd taught generations of people that saying no was sometimes the most loving thing you could do, for yourself and for the people you were refusing. Sarah, the young woman who'd called off her engagement years earlier, gave a eulogy. Rachel Chen saved my life, she said. Not by being nice or accommodating or understanding, but by being honest. By showing me that people who pressure you to compromise yourself are showing you exactly who they are, and you should believe them. By teaching me that losing people who want you to destroy yourself isn't a loss, it's liberation. Rachel was many things: a healthcare professional, an ethicist, an author, a mother, a wife. But most importantly, she was herself. Fully, completely, unapologetically herself. And in a world that constantly tells women to be smaller, quieter, more accommodating, more forgiving, Rachel's radical authenticity was revolutionary. She once told me that the people worth keeping will respect your boundaries, not resent them. And that's the truth she lived by, the truth she taught, and the truth that lives on in everyone whose life she touched. As they lowered my casket into the ground, I imagine Marcus and Sophia were still out there somewhere, still making the same choices that had destroyed them 45 years earlier. Still unable to understand that the problem had never been my refusal, it had been their request. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I'd lived my life on my terms, with my integrity intact, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could do for them. And in the end, that was what had been waiting. Not revenge or vindication or their suffering, though those had come. What had been waiting was peace. The peace that comes from knowing you lived according to your values, even when it cost you. The peace that comes from choosing yourself and discovering that you're worth choosing. The peace that comes from saying no and meaning it, and building a life on that foundation of honest boundaries. Marcus and Sophia had expected me to cave, to compromise, to destroy myself to accommodate them. Instead, they'd gotten something they'd never imagined. A woman who valued herself enough to let them go. And that self-respect, that integrity, that unwillingness to be diminished, was what had shocked them most of all. Not what I did to them, but what I did for myself. And in the end, that made all the difference.